Good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition Radio and podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, where today we're going to get into some super deep, super sciencey, fun stuff. I love genetics. I think that's the coolest thing that we have. And so today I wanted to jump into it a little bit, but I want to be specific to digestive health because, oh my goodness, that's probably the bulk of what I see. I'd say it is definitely the bulk of what I see. People who come in, excuse me, with pretty significant digestive issues that they have worked on forever and ever and have been to the doctors and done all the things and the elimination diets and on, and are still getting no relief. So let's talk about that because genetics play such a big role, have the potential of playing such a big role in our digestive health, as well as many other areas that we'll jump into on other episodes, but today we're going to focus on digestion. So as always, though, first thing we do is start the show with gratitude. Gratitude can change the world. I think it's such an important part of our day. I missed mine this morning, so I'll start the show today. I usually like to take a little bit of time in the morning, do my Bible study, and that did not happen this morning, but hopefully a little bit later. Anyway, what am I grateful for today? I think pretty typical for this time of year. I'm super grateful for Christmas, for the meaning of Christmas. Christ coming to save us is such a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I'm just forever grateful for being in this time and in this place and being a child of Christ. It's good stuff. So grateful for that. Grateful for my family. We get to take another week-long drive. It's been an interesting couple of months where we took 2 trips to Dallas, each one a week. So we're driving, and so we hop around, right? So we can work and we can see family, and we can do all the things that we want to do because we can do it remotely. So we did that twice in November, and now we're doing it again, going to Kansas and Arkansas. But it's so good, right? It's so good to have the ability. I think I'm grateful for that too. I have this amazing ability and opportunity to work remotely. Like, I work from my car. I have my hotspot. I can be on the internet and doing my work, and then be on location at other locations and seeing clients. And it's so cool. It's really, really good. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do again. We're going to head out and go see friends and family and do a little hopping around and have some fun with that and continue doing some work. And this time of year is a time of catch up. I feel like, and really preparing for next year. And so I've been super excited to have the time and the ability to really organize. I'm not a naturally organized person. And so to really organize and kind of get things moving and prepared for next year. Next year is going to be a really wonderful year. I'm excited about it. So there we are. Those are the things I'm grateful for, and so many other things. It's such a good place to be right now. Anyway, let's jump in. I want to jump into how genetics can impact digestion, but I think let's start with some of the basics first. If you're new to the show, I want to make sure that we have some basics because it can be a little bit confusing. The science of genetics, the science of epigenetics is forever or constantly evolving. It's so new. At least epigenetics is a new study for us, and we're learning all the time, all of the amazing, how epigenetics can impact us. But I think what's important is we understand that epigenetics is our potential, and so there's a big gives us a lot of power when we know what our epigenetic potential is. And so let's break it down a little bit. So we have our genetics. Back in, I don't remember, like early 2000s, late 90s, something like that, they finalized the Human Genome Project, right? And so what our genes mapped out our genes. So at that time, I believe this is the case. At that time, there was the understanding or the thought that our genes are our destiny. It's who we are. We have no choice in that. So if we look at our history, so for me personally, I have in my family autoimmune disease, cancer, strokes, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. I mean, you name it. We've got it all. And so there was a time where we're like, okay, well, which one of those is going to take me, right? And I think that right now we're in a place, due to epigenetics. Epigenetics is locations, to try to explain it simply enough. Epigenetics are locations on top of genes that control genetic expression. So, what we need to understand is then what controls those locations, right? So those locations are called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or you can call them variants, right? And you have all of these different variants that can impact genetic expression. What's beautiful about it is that that the epigenome is impacted by everything and every choice we make in life. So it's the food we eat, it's the exercise we get or don't get, it's the thoughts that we have, it's the relationships that we have, it's the trauma in our history or trauma that we're struggling with now. It's the food that we eat. I don't know if I said that already, but obviously as a nutritionist, that's a pretty big part of all of this, and it is anyway. What we put in our body is what is communicating with our genes. And so everything that we do, the toxins in the environment, which we have less control over. So we want to make sure that when we look at this, is that we understand that we have an amazing amount of control, but we can't control everything. So we want to be able to control the things that that we can control, right? We can't fret about the things like the toxins that are in the air. Now, we should stand up when it comes to the things that are happening with our toxins in the air. It's a little bit of a side note maybe, but the things, looking at the planes and the chemtrails and the plants, there are so many things that are in our environment that are really problematic for us. And I mean, the data is all there. So you can call conspiracy on chemtrails or not. The data is there. So this is the stuff that we really need to put our foots down to, because this is not okay. This is completely poisoning us. But as individuals, the things that we want to focus on are the things that we have immediate impact, right? So we can make the choices on the foods that we eat. We can make the choices that if we're speaking negatively to ourselves, we start making those changes, or we find someone who can help us make those changes. If we're not getting enough movement in our life, then what is it that we can do to increase movement? And I don't care if it's getting out of your chair and doing some jumping jacks, or going for walks, or going to the gym, or whatever it is that makes you happy. We're built to move, and we have to move, and that plays a big role in gene expression and how our genes express, which means it plays a role in how our bodies age, right? So, breaking it down to get now more specific into gut health. So, what we're all often, what we see so often, what I see so often, and it's so hard because it's such a difficult thing for people to deal with, but it's the bloating, the massive inflammation, the exhaustion, right? So you have GI issues. What then is going to happen mentally and emotionally? Well, I was just going to jump way ahead, but mentally and emotionally, our gut health impacts us mentally and emotionally. Pain impacts us mentally and emotionally. Our microbiome has an impact on our neurotransmitters, which is going to impact us mentally and emotionally. And then so despite, so many people who come to me, they're like, I've been to the doctors, I've done the elimination diets, and I've taken the probiotics, and I've done all of these things, and I still am struggling. Why am I still struggling? And so the thing that I want to make sure that we understand is, understanding your genetics is a huge key to understanding what's going on. Excuse me, what's going on with your body. Doesn't mean it's diagnostic, doesn't mean it's the end all be all, but it's a massive part of the picture. And so I have people run genetic testing as often as they are willing to do it, right? The testing has the potential of adding up, but if we can look at genetics, the genetics can help us determine, help us understand what foods we're sensitive to. It can help us understand metabolic pathways that aren't functioning properly. It can help us understand inflammatory markers. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The inability to convert vitamin D from the sun, right? The inability to convert the water soluble form of vitamin A, which is beta carotene, and plant based. That there's a conversion and there's a genetic component, or there's a SNP to this that can dictate how well we convert from the water soluble to the fat soluble. So if we're a vegetarian and we're eating all of this, all of these vegetables, we got our carrots, right, full of beta carotene, assuming it's going to convert into retinol, and we have genetic SNPs that don't allow that to happen, then we're not getting our vitamin A, right? And so vegetarians have the potential of being really deficient in a lot of things due to certain genetics. But all of us have potential one way or another. And so I think that that's the thing, is understanding that our genetics are our potential, that we have a huge amount of control over the expression of those genetics, and that it doesn't mean that we're wrong or built wrong or created improperly or any of that stuff. I fully believe we are beautifully and perfectly created by God, but we have this amazing ability to look inside and look deep. And when we understand how we're created and why we're created and what we can do to optimize and to optimize health, or to mitigate conditions and symptoms and diseases, this is amazing. This is the cool stuff, right? And so this is true personalized nutrition, personalized medicine, and at the same time, I think a part I skipped over that I think is like the foundation of all of it. It's God's gift of free will, right? And so God gave us, He created so beautifully and perfectly but He gave us the choices. He gave us the ability to make the choices in our lives. Awesome stuff. Makes it hard, makes us accountable, right? We can't blame certain things on our genetics. We can't blame most things on our genetics, because we're making the choices on how our genetics express. So anyway, if we start to dig into how our genetics impact our gut, we start to have the ability to mitigate and manage and optimize gut health. And so we have so many people who struggle with the IBS, right? IBS, oh my gosh, I have so many people coming to me telling me they've been diagnosed with IBS. IBS is like this cover up. I don't know what you have. You've got pain in belly and I can't tell what's going on, and you have IBS, right? It's a cop out as far as I'm concerned, right? There's always a reason, and so we just have to dig. We just have to dig to learn to understand. And so genetics play a part in it. Infections play a part in it. Inflammatory markers play a part in it. The vagus nerve plays a part in it. There's so many things that can play a role, and we have to remember that our gut and our brain is connected, right? And so it's the chicken or the egg, which doesn't really matter, right? We've got to address both. But understanding that one does not control the other. They are one and the same, essentially. So we have to look at how our gut is impacting our brain function, and how our brain function is impacting our gut function. And so how many of you out there who are listening have gone out and taken a bunch of probiotics, and you're like, well, it either made me worse, or it didn't help me at all, or I have no idea, or I just spent all this money taking the probiotics and I have no idea if this is something that I should take or not, right? So we want to try to kind of get past the dogma get past the the myths and really dive deep into what it is that we can do, that goes deeper into, it goes beyond just the elimination diets, right? This goes beyond GI testing. And I'm going to tell you, I do GI testing on pretty much everybody. But this is the stuff that it can really make, um, it can really bring a full view of the body, or a much larger view of the body, by having, I keep saying this, by, when we go in and we layer data. And I think that's so important, is layering in data so we have a much more complete picture of what's going on in our body. So, things with genetics, what genetics can reveal essentially about digestion is, genetics informs the body how to break down nutrients. So we think about zinc, copper, vitamin C. These are all super important in the immune system. They're super important in the gut lining. They can signal fullness and hunger and immune tolerance. So I work with people a lot with either GI dysfunction or who come in for weight loss, and there's often a blame game that people, especially people who are overweight, there's a blame game. I don't have enough willpower. I don't I have these cravings and I don't know how to manage them, and what I want people to understand is, so often it's not about willpower. It's about the chemicals that have gotten totally skewed by eating improperly, by genes, by which kind of goes together, right? And so it doesn't help anybody to play the blame game. What does that then do? So that goes into, okay, I'm talking negatively about myself, I'm feeling down on myself. That doesn't help anybody. All of these things create more stress, which is going to create more inflammation. So you can see how we can just go into these kind of nasty downward cycles if we don't stop it. We have to stop it in its tracks. So these chemicals, these hormones, are communicators. And so we have to have our hormones, and hormones do all kinds of things in the body. They're not just sex hormones, but we have to have these in line so our body knows when it's full, so it knows when it's hungry, and these can get totally skewed. So genetics can also play a huge role in how we detoxify. So how do we detoxify histamines? How do we detoxify environmental toxicants? I'm seeing so many people right now, we've talked about this, who are struggling with histamine intolerance and mast cell activation syndrome. And these are not diagnoses. These are symptoms. And mast cell activation syndrome is nasty. It's a big problem, right? But it's not a disease. It's a condition based on symptoms, and we've got to dig in and understand why, so we can start to dampen that crazy mast cell response or immune response, so it doesn't flare every time something happens that makes it flare. So we want to look at those, and again, go back to, it's not just about taking out high histamine foods. We've got to go deeper than that. So there are specific genes that we can look at that have an impact or play a role on, like, zinc and copper levels, right? So zinc and copper have an inverse relationship, right? So we want to have them nicely balanced. We don't want to have too much zinc because we don't have enough copper, and vice versa. And so we want to have those balanced. So one of the things to be really aware of is when you're taking supplements. If you're taking, we always hear, which is great, we hear about zinc for the immune system, and it's also amazing for the gut lining. A couple of different forms of zinc, but both really good for the gut and immune function. But if we're not aware and we're taking a bunch of zinc and we're not getting enough copper, then that can create a real problem. So there are also genes that impact vitamin C absorption and antioxidant protection for gut tissues. And so then there's like the TCF7L2. So I don't want to get too deep into which genes they are. I think it doesn't really benefit us for this conversation. but it's the knowledge that these specific genes, this one in particular influences insulin signaling, glucose response after meals, and it's tied to inflammation and cravings, right? So if we have this particular SNP that's turned on, then what's happening, right? We can have this signaling that can be off and wonky, right? So we can manage that. And so it's a situation where if we aren't managing it and we turn this gene on and we start to have this dysregulated signaling, we have the ability then to start to, when we have the understanding, we can regulate this signaling, right? So we can go back and we can turn things around, but we have to have the understanding and the knowledge of what's causing it in the first place, right? So this is the cool thing, because when we get into looking at genetics, we're taking, labs in themselves take a lot of the guesswork out. And we talk about this in functional medicine and functional nutrition, right? We want to test, not guess. Now we want to always pay attention to symptoms, but testing, it takes us to a deeper level, and then of course genetics takes us to an even deeper level. So it's this, it's our biochemical blueprint, right? And so it's fascinating what we have the ability to do once we uncover our genes. And so there are a couple of myths that I think that's important to talk about. One of them is about gluten. And so I will tell you that I eliminate gluten for just about everyone. Why? There are a lot of reasons. There are several reasons for that. But let's go first. Let's start with genetics. So there's a specific gene. It's this HLA-DQ 2.5 or DQ8. And so these specific genes can predispose people to celiac, right? So we can look at genes and we can say, okay, I have, or someone may have the potential for autoimmune disease. We can look and see if someone has the potential. So celiac is autoimmune. We can see if someone has the potential specifically for celiac, right? So this is amazing, right? So we know this. We have the ability to mitigate it. I'll tell you a story. I think I've told this story before, but maybe one of my very favorite stories, where I was working with a girl, 18 years old, 5'9", like 90 pounds. She couldn't put on weight. She was, cystic acne, depression, anxiety. I mean, the list goes on. She had a lot going on, lots of mental and emotional, but then the physical stuff as well. So long story short, we did a lot of testing on her. She had a lot of work to do. We also did genetic testing, but essentially over the 2-week period of time, we were waiting on labs to come back. We took out the basic things, right? We took out gluten and dairy and corn and soy, sugar. Anyway, we took all of those things out, and her world changed just within that 2-week period, right? So it's a beautiful testament to what food can do, good and bad. And so once we did that, and then we got her genetics back, what we saw was she had the potential for autoimmune disease. She had the potential for celiac disease. So she was on the road to a lifetime of disease just eating what she thought she should be eating. So this is what is so amazing is, yes, we took the food out, but we confirmed it with her genetics, and then of course with the other labs. And it helped guide her to understand the foods that she should eat, the foods that she should avoid. And over time, for some people, foods can come back in, but for people like this, wheat really should just never be a part of your diet, right? It is a problem. It's inflammatory. Now, not everybody has these genes. I have these genes, so I avoid gluten almost entirely. I've been a little lax over the last couple of months, but for me, I know that it's problematic because it puts pimples on my face. That's great. 50 years old with 53 years old and pimples on my face is not ideal. But that's the thing, is you understand if it's coming out, if you're seeing the symptoms, what else is going on inside, right? It's inflammation. It's a problem. So we don't want to push that. Not everybody has these celiac genes. Not everybody has the autoimmune genes. Not everybody shows sensitivity to gluten. There are multiple genes that can show sensitivity to gluten. Here's the thing that I think that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to, though. So when we're talking about this, it's not just about gluten. It's about the changing of the structure of wheat and the pesticides and the herbicides. So what we know, pesticides and herbicides are toxicants. Pesticides and herbicides have been proven to create leaky gut, right? So it opens up the cells in the GI. It causes an inflammatory response, which causes an immune response, and the body's like, this is not okay. We're getting really angry right now. And so if we stay chronically permeable, right? So our gut lining is chronically permeable. That's a huge problem. Now, when it comes to gluten and wheat, some people are going to be fine if it's an heirloom grain, right? I'm not always excited about grains. I think some people need them, some people don't, but it depends on our genetics, right? I mean, some people, they do really well with all fat, right? You think of I think it's the Inuits, right? Is it Inuits? Anyway, I'm going outside of what we're talking about, and I shouldn't do that. But we're talking about the people who eat, whale blubber, and they survive on this. This is how they're supposed to eat. There are people who just, the bulk of their food is sweet potato. That's completely opposite. You've got high carbohydrate versus high fat, and high saturated fat at that. So we have to make, this is another piece to this, is if we understand our genetics, especially those of us who are mutts, right? You've got all of these different genetics. If we understand what the basics, like the foundation of our genetics are, as far as the foods that we should eat and what's going to benefit us the most, that's going to help us to create a diet and a lifestyle that helps us to optimize. So super, super cool stuff. So point to all of this is we have modified the wheat grain to where gluten is much higher than it is naturally, right? So what is it about humans that think we can do things better than God? I have no idea, but that's what we've done. And so that creates a problem. It bypasses the blood-brain barrier, so it can impact us mentally and emotionally. And then you've got the pesticides and the herbicides. So is it fact that everyone in the world should avoid gluten? No, that is a myth. But we want to, if we're going to eat it, I think ideally we have heirloom grains with that are fermented, like, so your sourdough breads are going to be probably our best breads if we're going to do something like that. We don't have fermented, well, as far as I know, we don't have fermented pasta, but we just want to make sure that we're eating it as clean as possible, and that it's organic, and that it's an heirloom grain, and staying away from the pesticides and herbicides. And if you know your genes and you have celiac genes, stay away from it. It's not worth it. Okay. So probiotics fix the gut. Now, is this a myth? It's not necessarily a myth, but it's so nuanced. It's amazingly nuanced. And so if we don't have a robust microbiome, then our immune function goes down, our mental and emotional health goes down, everything goes down, right? And so the thing is that if we have, there's a variant called FUT2, and these are non-secretors, right? And so your body may not support certain strains like bifidobacteria. Interesting, right? So what this means is that not all probiotics work for everyone, right? And so also, if we look at a GI panel and somebody comes back and they have too much of a good bug, this can be a problem too. So they have a bug that's where it's supposed to be, and then you take the same bug, and those bugs you get too much, and it's a problem, and you can't figure out why the probiotics aren't working for you, or maybe they're creating more problem, or you're so dysbiotic that any probiotics or prebiotics just upset the system, and you're like, they don't work for me, I don't need them. So what we need to consider is the fact that you don't have a robust microbiome, so you don't have the ability to manage things like vegetable fibers, types of probiotics, specific keystone bugs, and that's where the work needs to be done. So it's not that we don't want good, probiotics. It's that we have to be super specific. And if we understand our genes, we then have an understanding of what's going to be best for us. Now, for me, doing a GI panel is ideal because the one that I do helps us to understand the bugs that are best for that person and how to build up a dysbiotic gut. But knowing if someone has this FUT2 variant can be key. Also, in understanding what probiotics are important for building up a robust immune system. That's the thing that we need to really focus on more than anything. If you're having GI issues, we all have to build a robust microbiome. It is everything. Our microbiome, it communicates with every organ in our body. It communicates with our brain. Many of us are missing these keystone bacteria and don't realize that our symptoms are because we're missing these keystone bacteria. So it's super foundational. The things that I've been doing of late is, bringing in different types of prebiotics. Like every day, I'm putting different types of prebiotics in my food, in my smoothies, in my coffee. Anywhere I can get it, I'm bringing in different types of prebiotics. Now, not everybody can do that. My gut's pretty good, right? I don't have really any type of gut issue, and I haven't in a really, really long time. Some people, though, take certain prebiotics. It's going to cause bloating. It's going to cause discomfort. It might cause diarrhea or constipation. And you got to take this as a sign, right? If there are certain prebiotics that you can't eat, there's something to that. If you can't eat raw vegetables, it's a symptom. It's your body talking to you. If you've got to cook your vegetables. And I've heard more times than not, people are going, okay, well, I can't eat vegetables, I'm going to go all carnivore. And they're very excited about going all carnivore because it gets rid of all of their symptoms. They're like, everything's great, but what's it doing? It's not creating a robust microbiome. If you go all carnivore, the reason you do well with it is because you don't have the right bugs that are helping you with, maybe it's the beans, maybe it's the lectins, maybe it's the raw vegetables, whatever it is. But we are then, streamlining is sort of what's coming to mind, sort of streamlining our microbiome instead of a diverse, robust microbiome, which is a big problem. We can't do that. So we've talked about carnivore diet in the past here. There's a time I tried it a little bit myself, but it doesn't make sense to me, right? And I'm going to go back, to my foundations when, God gave us all things to eat, the plants, the animals, all of those things. These are the things that we are supposed to eat. If we can't, we have to take it as a signal. We've got to listen to what the body's telling us. And it's not just about eliminating plants. It's about creating a microbiome and a gut that has the ability to break down these plants, right? And so it takes time. All of these things take time. So there is also here that vitamin C boosts immunity for everyone. Vitamin C is important, right? We always hear that. Vitamin C is an antioxidant. It helps to recycle other antioxidants. It's a big deal. But there are certain variants where we don't absorb vitamin C efficiently. Now, we talked about this a little while ago. This can happen with a lot of different things. It can be with vitamin A. It can be with essential fatty acids, so your DHA and EPA, right? And so if we don't have, or if we have variants that don't allow for the conversion and the utilization, then we need to know that, because then we can manage that, right? And so with those who don't absorb vitamin C efficiently, so those people need higher supplementation. Same with vitamin D. If we're not converting vitamin D from the sun in our skin, then we need to supplement vitamin D. Now, a lot of times we're nutrient deficient. Yes, it can be these metabolic pathways governed by these variants. but also the inflammatory response. If we're chronically inflamed, we're going to use up, we're going to keep using up nutrients and keep using up nutrients. And so our nutrients go low. We're like, why is my vitamin D low? Well, is it because you're inflamed? Is it because it's genetics? Is it both? Right? So, again, these are always the questions that we want to ask and that I'm asking my clients and my patients all the time. So, another one. So, coffee is like, it's the thing. Everybody loves it or they hate it. You know, coffee is the best thing in the world or it's the worst thing in the world. You know, and I'm sort of that, you know, I'm like, you know, coffee is great. I enjoy coffee, good organic coffee that is not high in mold. I want to make sure and remember this because we can have genetics or variants that push our potential to be more sensitive to mycotoxins, right? So you have two people, I know I'm a little off a little bit, but you have two people who live in the same house and eat the same food. One experiences significant symptoms with mycotoxins, whether in food or whether in the home or in the environment, and the other one doesn't. Well, that's genetics, right? There are, I don't remember which one it is. I'd have to go back and look. It's not in here because it's not the topic today, but keep that in mind. If there are symptoms and one person has them, one person doesn't, it's probably a genetic variant. And so there are a couple of genotypes, like there's the TCF7L2 and ADIPOQ. So coffee can support insulin regulation and inflammation for these people, right? For some people who are prone to Alzheimer's, coffee can help manage Alzheimer's, right? It's a piece of it, right? It's not for everyone, but coffee can upregulate or downregulate detoxification or like liver function. I think it's phase 1, maybe. Should know that. But you know, some people, if and a lot of times we just know this naturally because we can feel it. If we're one of those people where coffee just makes us jittery, it doesn't work for us, we don't like it, you know, it's probably because it's your genetic potential. But it's, you know, it's not for everyone for sure, but some people it's a really good thing. So coffee is not the devil at all, but the mycotoxins in the coffee is certainly devilish, right? So if you're gonna drink coffee, drink a good, healthy, organic coffee that's been tested, so you know it's not high in mycotoxins. Why would coffee be high in mycotoxins as well as pesticides and herbicides? But what happens, annoyingly enough, is coffee, like many things, is sold by weight. So they weigh it down with water, and then it's in the bag. It's weighted down, but then it grows mold. So it can be a huge problem for people. So there are lots of different types. I say lots. There's several different types of coffee who, you know, they test for mycotoxins. So be super aware of that one. Important stuff. So, so we have digestive genes that impact health and mood. So we have our gut, right? So 70% of our immune function is from our gut. Also, though, 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So this is impacting physical health, mental and emotional health. And so we also have then zinc, copper, and vitamin C variants. They can weaken the first line of immune defense in the gut lining. And so if we're not utilizing zinc and copper, if we're not utilizing vitamin C, it can create a problem for our immune function, right? It creates a problem for the gut lining if it's not supported. And so we also have variants that can impact the production of B12, of GABA, which is calming, of folate, right? We've talked about these. There's these methylation SNPs, and there are multiple. So it's not just MTHFR, right? There are multiple genes that impact methylation, and so there are a couple in particular. So what can happen in these pathways is you have like glutamate. So glutamate is an amino acid, super supportive, gut supportive amino acid. Some people have specific variants where glutamate goes along the pathway, and in my mind I see it as an elevation, right? It kind of goes up the pathway, and it's supposed to go down based on genetic variants, or these variants. These enzymes push it down the pathway to go down to GABA, which is calming. So glutamate's excitatory, GABA is calming. So what can happen with certain people who have these genetic variants, so say you eat monosodium glutamate, right, MSG. So that's a glutamate, so you've got glutamine goes to glutamate. Glutamate stays elevated because these enzymes aren't functioning the way that they do in other people, and it stays excitatory. It doesn't go down the GABA pathway, so it just sits up here. What's this doing is causing brain inflammation, anxiety, right? It's excitatory. It's not good. And so we can test these things. When we're testing neurotransmitters, we can look at glutamate. We can also look at these GAD enzymes and see if there are antibodies to these GAD enzymes that are creating this issue as well. So this is, again, it just really gives us a lot of indication. So when someone comes to me and says, I don't do well with Chinese food, or I know glutamine is a problem, glutamate is a problem, then I start to think, okay, it would be interesting to look at their genetics and see, or do the GAD testing, but to see if it's a genetic variant that's creating this problem, right? And we want to make sure that we're addressing it because it is inflammatory, right? It can create really intense cognitive issues. And so it's the same with, certain variants that don't allow for the production or the utilization of folate, for B12. And so all of these things then, of course, if we've got poor methylation, so we've got MTR and MTRR, and I mean, like I said, the list goes on. But it creates more anxiety. It can create, estrogen issues. We're not eliminating our estrogens properly, whether it's exogenous or endogenous, right? So we have exogenous estrogens that come from the environment, from the toxins in the environment. And so we get this overload of estrogens if we're not detoxifying properly due to these genetic markers, and it can push the problem. So knowing is key. Going back to histamine and MCAS, or mast cell activation syndrome, there's a DAO gene, and so DAO is an enzyme that helps to break down histamines in the gut. And so what can happen though if this gene is not functioning properly, histamines build up. We can have migraines, we can have hives, we can have IBS, we can have anxiety. And so a DAO deficiency can create poor histamine breakdown, which also can be misdiagnosed as leaky gut, right, or MCAS. So we got to know why. If you're having these issues, you have these massive flares, let's start to dig in as to why this is happening, okay? So let's see, moving on. We have these protocols that we do, and the protocols are good. A lot of them, they work really well, but they don't always work for everyone. And so understanding our genes can help us, again, dial into the things that are going to be more productive when it comes to creating a protocol that is successful, that works for you, than just guessing, right? So yes, doing the lab testing, doing the genetics, layering in that data really can help us complete that picture of what's going to be best for us. So let me do this. I want to do a quick plug. I keep forgetting to do this, but I want to make sure that I am talking about our sponsor. So our sponsor is Susan Drake with Mountain Medical Concepts. And one of the products that she sells a few, right? So this PNOE is a really cool metabolic analysis. It is a VO2 max and helps us really understand the body, how it's functioning. It looks at, you can look at this, right? It's brain and bone and respiratory function and heart and cells, kidney, nervous system, posture, recovery, liver, gut, lungs. All of these things are key to longevity, which I don't like the word longevity. It really is about the quality of life, the quality that we have in our years. It's not how long we live, but simply enough, it's longevity. Anyway, but this can really help us to again, you know, if we're layering in data, we're dialing in as much as we can to help us to, whether it's to manage or to optimize. And so Pinoy is great. Susan has a number of really amazing products that are specific to practitioners that can really help to build a practice, but also is important for patient care. So peptides, exosomes. You know, we're talking about gut health right now. We've got amazing peptides that are specific to gut health that work beautifully. Huge fan. So if you're having GI issues and you've done all the things, looking at peptides can be a part of a good protocol to help get you through that. Still need to understand your labs, still need to understand your genetics, but peptides can play a key role in helping to create a good, healthy gut. All right. And then, of course, all of these things that I'm talking about are a big part of the program that I have created. Your Precision Wellness Blueprint truly is the science of you, right? So this is, when I talk about layering data, I've created this program with that built in. I want to layer in all of these components, everything that we can, that builds out a program and a protocol specifically for each person. It goes deep. It's really cool. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I've had a lot of really good feedback on the reports that people are getting. And the cool thing too is I'm doing it right now for $47. It's a starting point, but it still goes really deep. And then anybody who wants to go deeper with layering the genetics and the labs and all of these other things, of course we can do that. But getting the first report based on some key factors for each person really helps build out. It's usually a 20 to 25 page report, right? Based on that person and where that person is today, but also can give guidance and a lot of information on how to start to learn to understand the body, their particular body, and then how to move forward in, you know, learning their body and understanding what they need to do for themselves to optimize moving forward. So super cool report. Have had a lot of fun with it. So check that out. $47. Cool stuff. Okay, so let's get back into standard protocols for gut health and for genetics and why they don't always work. You know, one of the things that I see so often, and it breaks my heart, is somebody goes to their conventional medical practice, they have these GI symptoms, they're diagnosed, remember IBS is not a diagnosis, but they're diagnosed with IBS, and then they're put on PPIs, they're put on NSAIDs, they're put on antibiotics. All of these things are so problematic. NSAIDs or PPIs are exceptionally harmful. If you've been on a PPI for more than 2 months, you got to start thinking about how you're going to get off. Now, I need to say this. I can't get you off drugs like this. Your doctor has to work with you on that. But you need to make sure that there's an understanding of how to come off of it. If you've been on it for years, what could happen? Osteopenia, osteoporosis, cardiovascular issues. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? So they deplete nutrients. You know, we have specifically zinc, magnesium, B12, but it's across the board, right? If your GI is not functioning, you're not going to absorb nutrients across the board, right? So it makes it even more of an issue if you have these genetic weaknesses, right? And I don't know that they're weaknesses, it's just how you're made. But if we know it, then we know what to do about it. And so there are also genetic factors that can increase iron overload, right? So there are genetic factors that can create an overdose of B12 or deficiency risk, right? And so then, of course, we talked about the histamine triggers. So let's see, what what do we do? And so we kind of already are talking about all of this, right? What do we do? Well, we do the testing. It's not there's some really, really expensive genetic tests out there. So there's one that's called in Intelex. It's 2 X's. I always have a hard time with it. It's not one that I run, but my friend and collaborator, Dr. Ben Bush, he is a regenerative medicine doctor, and he does this a lot. Intellinetics, maybe. Anyway, he does it a lot, but it's really expensive, right? You get the Cadillac of this test, and it's over $1,000. But it's if you can do it, it's worth it because it gives you an amazing amount of information. It's really freaking cool. But we have these other panels that have the ability to give you just as much good information. And there's one that I've been doing lately that brings in your ancestry along with your genetic data, right? And so you put those two things together, it really builds out what your ancestry is and how your genetics play a role, what you should eat, and then how you can mitigate the genes that may be creating exposures for you. So understanding, which. So I think it's understanding which tests are really worthwhile. So we have our mainstream, it's the Ancestry and the 23andMe and that kind of thing. They give you a little bit of information, but they don't give you good information. And I think that there are a lot of problems with those as well, as far as data being leaked. So I think we've got to be really careful with those. So in my opinion, I think going to your practitioner to get these genetic tests done that are through practitioners is ideal, because then you can have guidance through them as well, and how do you manage the things that come up, because there are a lot of important things that the long COVID, we can look at cardiovascular risk factors, athletic abilities, long COVID, you name it. There's so many things that it's not just about food, right, and sensitivities. There's all kinds of things that can give us guidance as to how to manage these things. There are a lot of people struggling with long COVID. So let's try to get beyond that, and if we know our genetics, then we can support that, right? So there are all different types of, and I think that this is an important thing to go back to as well, is we get on these kicks, right? These diet fads. And I have said for a long time, if I'm going to say that I'm anything, I'm going to say that I'm paleo, because it's basic, it's foundational, it's from the earth, it's meat, it's veg, it's fat. But there's more to it, and for people from different parts of the world, that's not always the right thing. So I like the idea of paleo, that it is foundational, but there's so much more to it. We've got a Nordic way of eating. We've got the Mediterranean that works really well for some people. It does not work well for me. Why? Right? It's specific types of fat. And so this is the stuff, and this is why I love it. I love genetics from, undergrad. It was just sort of really hit me, and I fell in love with it. But as I've done my own research on my own stuff, which is where your precision wellness blueprint comes from, is from me working on, over the years on my own stuff, going, this is the stuff that people need to know, just going really, really deep in this. We need to understand that when we're told we should do a Mediterranean diet, we need to know why. And is it actually the one that's going to be best for us, or paleo, or Nordic, right? We have to understand these things. And so other things that we can do that can be super helpful for us are, your typical lifestyle factors, right? So going into, are you doing your sauna? The infrared sauna is huge. So for somebody like me, where there's a particular SNP that I have to really, really manage, and it impacts my cognitive function, it impacts my GI function, it impacts my lipids. It's all of these things, and so it's the ApoE gene, and we want to, and understanding that can be key in a lot of things that we do. And so it's kind of where it started for me, I think. Well, that's not entirely true, but understanding that helps me know how to eat, helps me know how to manage my cognitive health, helps me know how to manage my lipid function. I mean, not lipid function, but my lipids. Um, and so I want others to know this also, right? And I can't sit here and say just because this works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. And when I'm working with people, I want to be as personalized and distant from my own stuff as possible, right? I've heard many stories about practitioners having a negative experience, whether it's with a supplement or you name it, right? And so they put that on all of their patients. You can't do that, right? We still have to be open to the understanding that each person is unique in their experiences, in their lifestyle, in their genetics, in their health status, in all of these things. And so we can't put our personal stuff into these protocols, which is why the testing and the genetics play such a big role. But then also having a really good intake, right? So a really good intake can help us understand, you know, history, medical history, trauma history, even, which I don't do this, but even could we go as deep as generational history, right? So we do some of that, right? We're looking at parents and grandparents and their history of disease and which, you know, kind of helps us to understand potential, but really the key is going to be going back to genetics. So I think that we're at a pretty good stopping point here, but I hope that this is enough for you to start to consider if you aren't quite getting the results that you want in whatever case. You know, is it your athletic ability? Is it your digestion? Is it cardiovascular health? I mean, the list goes on and on. Can we still go deeper? And once we do go deeper, layering in the information to have a real understanding of who you are as an individual to live the best life you can, right? When we don't feel good, we don't do good. And I think that's sort of the key for all of this, right? Is to do the best that we can and to feel the best that we can so we can do that. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but we're going to do more of this. I have lots and lots of topics that I want to discuss when it comes to genetics and layering in genetics, and I think it's fascinating. This again, going back to it, this is true personalized medicine, it's personalized nutrition, it's personalized healthcare, and that's what we need. We need personalized. We can't keep assuming and pretending that everybody's the same, because everybody's not the same. We don't react the same to medicines, to supplements, to toxins and environment, right? We're so different. So join us again. We're out for the next couple of weeks, right? So we've got Christmas and then New Year's. And so we'll be back at the beginning of the year, which is going to be our 6-year anniversary. How crazy is that? Anyway, I've been on the air now 6 years. Super fun. Thank you, Henry, for putting up with me and all of my tech mistakes that I always make. But anyway, this has been great. I hope you all have a wonderful, beautiful Merry Christmas if you're traveling. Safe travels. God bless all of you. Have a wonderful New Year. Set yourself up for success. You know, this next year is going to be a really great year, and I'm excited for